The rain was a cold, insistent whisper against my soaked light blue-collared shirt. Each drop felt like a tiny pinprick of misery against my skin. I had been walking for what felt like an eternity, the gravel road stretching ahead like a gray ribbon unspooling into an indifferent, pitch-black horizon. My thumb, perpetually extended, felt numb, a useless appendage in the dark. This stretch of road, miles from anywhere, was notoriously empty. A hitchhiker's purgatory, I had often thought, half joking, half resigned. My old pickup had died an ignominious death back at the trailer. A wheezing cough and then silence, leaving me stranded, and the prospect of groceries a distant dream. I just needed to get to town. Just to town. Then came a low purr, a sound so smooth and powerful it made me flinch. I turned, squinting through the sheeting rain and the oppressive darkness, and saw it. A dark, imposing vehicle sliding out of the gloom. Not the beat-up sedan or clunky truck I had hoped for, but a sleek, black BMW with tinted windows. My stomach clenched. Trouble, I thought, even though I hadn't done anything. Not really. The car pulled alongside me, its tires hissing on the wet pavement, and the window rolled down with a soft, electronic hum. "You need a ride?" The voice was low, baritone, and undeniably commanding. I peered inside, my heart doing a strange little jig against my ribs. The man behind the wheel was all sharp angles and quiet authority. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored black Mafia suit, the white-collared shirt beneath it glowing faintly in the dashboard lights. His hair, dark as the night surrounding us, was styled back impeccably, and his eyes, even in the gloom, held a startling intensity, a deep, piercing obsidian. He looked older than me, certainly, with a hardness to his jawline that spoke of difficult decisions, but not old. Dangerous, that was the word that came to mind. Unflinchingly dangerous. "Yes, sir?" I managed, my voice a thin thing against the drumming rain. "Just trying to get to town." He studied me for a long moment, his gaze sweeping over my soaked, shivering frame, the light blue shirt clinging uncomfortably to my chest, and the desperate hope that must have been etched across my face. I felt an uncomfortable heat rise in my cheeks under his scrutiny. It wasn't accusatory, not exactly, but it was thorough, like he was cataloging every detail, every potential debt I might owe. "Get in," he said, his voice betraying nothing. It was an order, not an invitation. I didn't hesitate. The passenger door opened with a solid, expensive thunk, and I practically fell inside, shaking water from my hair. The interior of the BMW was surprisingly warm, smelling faintly of rich leather, expensive cologne, and something metallic, perhaps the lingering scent of a weapon. I pulled the door shut, the sound echoing in the sudden quiet, and exhaled slowly, a long, shaky breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Thank you," I said again, trying to sound more composed, more grateful. "I really appreciate it." He nodded, a slight, almost imperceptible movement, and put the car in gear. The BMW moved forward, smooth and powerful, eating up the miles with effortless grace. I sat stiffly, hands clasped in my lap, acutely aware of his presence beside me. The silence stretched, heavy and charged. I kept my gaze fixed on the road ahead, watching the wipers sweep arcs through the blurry, rain-slicked world outside. I could feel his eyes on me sometimes, brief, assessing glances, but I didn't dare meet them. I was a stray, a nobody, and he was clearly a man of immense power. The imbalance hummed between us, a tangible thing. "What's your name?" he asked, breaking the quiet with a jolt. "Julian," I replied a little too quickly. "Julian Reed." "Dante," he supplied, offering only the first name, spoken with the weight of a title. "Where are you headed?" "In town. The grocery store. Mostly," I admitted, feeling a fresh wave of embarrassment wash over me. "My truck broke down. Back at the trailer." "Unfortunate," he murmured, a non-committal sound that could mean anything. I braced myself for a lecture about hitchhiking at night, about the dangers, about my choices. But it didn't come. Instead, he just drove, the steady hum of the engine a counterpoint to the relentless rain. I risked a quick glance at his profile. His jaw was set, his gaze focused on the road, his hands strong and capable, one resting lightly on the leather steering wheel, the cuff of his white shirt peeking out from the black suit jacket. There was a quiet intensity about him, a contained energy that was both intimidating and, in a strange way, compelling. I found myself wondering about him, about the life he led, the things he must have seen in the underworld I only knew from movies. The town, when we finally reached it, was a blur of neon signs reflecting on wet asphalt. The BMW pulled up in front of the small, nondescript grocery store, its engine purring to a stop. I reached for the door handle, eager to escape the suffocating intimacy of the small space. "Thanks again, Dante," I said, my hand on the latch. "I really appreciate it, Julian," he said, and I paused, my hand still on the handle, my eyes meeting his for the first time since I'd gotten in. His dark eyes, deep and unreadable, held mine. "Watch your back out there." It wasn't a warning, not exactly, more like a quiet observation, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher in their depths. Possessiveness maybe, or just the weary wisdom of someone who knew how cruel the world could be. I swallowed, a lump forming in my throat. "I will," I promised. And then, before I could overthink it, I pushed the door open and stepped out into the cold, wet night air. The car pulled away almost immediately, leaving me standing on the sidewalk, the scent of leather and cologne lingering in my nostrils. The rain had eased to a drizzle, but the chill had sunk deep into my bones. I watched the taillights disappear down the street. A strange mixture of relief and something else, something akin to disappointment, swirled inside me. The grocery store was warm, smelling of disinfectant and ripe fruit, a welcome change from the damp chill outside. I pushed a cart through the aisles, picking out the necessities. Bread, milk, instant coffee, a cheap can of soup. My mind, however, kept replaying the scene in the car. Dante, his steady gaze, the quiet authority in his voice, the unexpected ride. It was such a small thing, really a simple act of assistance. But it had felt momentous, a crack in the usual indifference of my world. I usually tried to stay invisible, to blend in, but he had seen me, really seen me. I paid for my meager groceries, the familiar sting of my dwindling funds a dull ache in my chest. Outside, the drizzle had stopped, leaving the air fresh and clean, but the sky remained a bruised black. I slung my backpack, now heavier with provisions, over my shoulder and started the long walk back to the trailer. The thought of another several miles on foot was daunting, but at least I wouldn't be doing it in the heavy rain. As I walked, I couldn't shake the image of his eyes. There was a loneliness in them, I thought, a quiet melancholy that resonated with something deep inside me. It was a fleeting impression, perhaps just a projection of my own feelings onto a stranger, but it lingered. I was used to people looking through me or past me, rarely at me, but he had, and the way he'd said my name, Julian, had sent a strange shiver down my spine. It felt like an acknowledgement, a subtle recognition of my existence. The walk back was uneventful, the road blessedly drying. By the time I reached the turnoff for the trailer park, my legs ached, and my shoulders were protesting the weight of the backpack. The trailer, a rusting metal box nestled among similar boxes, looked even more dilapidated in the moonlight. It wasn't much, but it was mine, a small haven of quiet solitude. I unlocked the door, the familiar squeak of the hinges a welcome sound, and stepped inside, dropping my backpack with a thud. The silence of the trailer wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. I put away the groceries, made myself a cup of instant coffee, and sat at the small, wobbly table, staring out the grimy window. The sky was pitch dark, the stars pricking through the gloom. I thought about the broken-down truck, about the repairs I couldn't afford, about the endless cycle of making do. It was a bleak landscape both inside and out. But then, an image of Dante, his strong hands on the steering wheel, his intense dark eyes, flickered in my mind. It was a small, unexpected warmth in the cold expanse of my night. The next day, the sun was a watery disk in a pale sky, but I spent the daylight hours working a shift at a local diner. By the time I returned, evening had fallen again. I spent some time tinkering with the truck, a futile exercise. Really, the engine was beyond my limited mechanical skills and even more limited budget. I needed a new part, a specific, expensive part, and that meant more money than I currently possessed. The frustration gnawed at me, a familiar companion. As the night deepened, I decided a walk might clear my head. I headed down the road away from the trailer park towards the small creek that snaked through the woods. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine. I found a smooth, flat rock by the water's edge and sat, skipping stones across the dark surface. The rhythm was meditative, a small distraction from the anxieties that constantly circled my mind. I was halfway through a particularly satisfying skip when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. My head snapped up. It was the same sleek black BMW pulling slowly to a stop a few yards from where I sat. My heart gave a familiar lurch. Dante again. He got out of the car, moving with an unhurried grace that belied his imposing presence. He was in his suit as always, the black fabric merging with the shadows. He walked towards me, his dress shoes making soft thuds on the damp ground. I stood up, feeling a sudden nervousness like a child caught doing something wrong. "Julian," he said, his voice quiet but carrying clearly in the night air. "Everything all right?" "Yes, sir," I replied, my voice a little too high. "Just getting some air." He nodded, his gaze sweeping over the creek, the woods, then settling on me. "I saw your truck still sitting there. Didn't make it to the shop." I shook my head. "Needs a new fuel pump. Don't have the money for it right now." The admission felt raw, a vulnerability I usually kept hidden. He was silent for a moment, his eyes unreadable. Then he reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small, high-quality business card. "I own a garage in town. It's for my private fleet, but the mechanics are the best. Go there. Tell them Dante sent you. They will fix it for you. You can pay it off over time." My jaw dropped slightly. "Really? You do that?" "Just handling business," he said, his voice flat, but I thought I detected a hint of something softer in his eyes. "No one should be stranded out here." He held out the card. My fingers brushed his as I took it. His skin was warm, his grip firm. A strange current, faint but undeniable, passed between us. It was a fleeting touch, barely there, but it left a lingering warmth on my fingertips. "Thank you, Dante," I said, my voice thick with genuine gratitude. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," he replied, a faint, almost smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Just get that truck running." He turned to leave, but then paused, his back to me. "You still eating those instant noodles, Julian?" I flushed. "Sometimes." He sighed, a soft, exasperated sound. "Come by my office tomorrow night. It's behind the Italian club on 4th Street. I'll make sure you get a proper meal." My head reeled. A proper meal from a man who looked like he ran the city. It was so unexpected, so completely out of the realm of anything I could have anticipated. "But why?" I blurted out before I could stop myself. He turned, his dark eyes meeting mine, and this time there was no mistaking the flicker of something akin to concern, even tenderness. "Because everyone deserves a hot meal, Julian, and you look like you could use one." His gaze lingered on me for a moment longer. Then he gave a curt nod and walked back to his BMW. I watched him drive away, the card with the garage's name clutched in my hand. The moon hung high, painting the world in silver and shadow. I was left standing by the creek, the chill of the night air slowly seeping into my bones, but a different kind of warmth, a surprising and unfamiliar warmth, blooming in my chest. Dante. He was an enigma, a puzzle I hadn't even known I was trying to solve. And now I was going to have dinner with him. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. The next night, I walked into the back entrance of the club, feeling like an alien in a foreign land. The hallway was dimly lit with sconces, the air smelling of expensive wine and rich sauces. Two large men in suits gave me curious, wary glances but let me pass when I gave my name. I found Dante in his office, a surprisingly sophisticated room with dark wood paneling, a large mahogany desk, and a window looking out onto the alleyway. He was bent over some documents, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Dante," I said, my voice a little shaky. He looked up, his obsidian eyes softening slightly as they registered my presence. "Julian, come in," he gestured to the leather visitor's chair opposite his desk. "I just need to finish this contract. Then we can eat." I sat stiff and awkward, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. The silence was less oppressive than in the car, but still thick with unspoken things. I watched him, fascinated by the way he focused, the small, almost imperceptible frown lines that appeared between his brows as he read. He was so focused, so completely immersed in his work. It struck me then that he was probably a very lonely person, too. The power, the authority, the isolation of being at the top of a dangerous world. It must be heavy. After what felt like an eternity, he put down his pen, stretched and exhaled. "All right, dinner." He stood and I quickly followed suit. He led me to a small private dining area adjoining the office, surprisingly cozy, with a laid table and soft lighting. On the table, 2 plates were already set out. There was a steaming bowl of pasta that smelled incredible, rich, savory, and undeniably authentic. "It's a family recipe," he said, catching my awestruck gaze. "My nana's sauce. Hope you like it." I sat down almost reverently as he served generous portions onto our plates. The sauce was thick, clinging to the pasta, smelling of basil and slow-cooked tomatoes. It was the most delicious thing I had tasted in a long, long time. I ate slowly, savoring every mouthful, the warmth spreading through me, chasing away the lingering chill of the past few weeks. "This is amazing, Dante," I managed, my mouth full. He smiled, a small, genuine smile that transformed his face, softening the sharp angles, bringing a warmth to his eyes I hadn't seen before. "Just call me Dante, Julian. No need for titles here." "Dante," I repeated, tasting the name on my tongue. Felt strange, intimate, like a secret. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, the clinking of silverware against ceramic the only sound. I felt a sense of ease settle over me, an unfamiliar peace. It was just pasta, just a meal, but it felt like so much more. It felt like care, like being seen not as a problem to be solved, but as a person. "So," Dante said, breaking the quiet, his voice a little softer now, less formal. "Tell me about your truck. What exactly is wrong with it?" And I did. I told him about the sputtering engine, the dying cough, the despair I felt looking at it, knowing I couldn't fix it. I found myself talking more freely than I had with anyone in years about my struggles, my hopes, the quiet desperation that defined my life. He listened, really listened, his gaze steady, his expression thoughtful. There was no judgment in his eyes, only a quiet understanding. When I finished, the silence that followed was different. It wasn't awkward or charged, but companionable, a shared space. "It sounds like you're pretty resourceful, Julian," Dante said finally, his voice gentle. "You've been making do with a lot." I shrugged, a small, self-deprecating gesture. "It's all I know. It doesn't have to be," he said, his dark eyes holding mine. There was a challenge in his gaze, but also something else. Something I couldn't quite name. Promise, perhaps, or a question. I looked down at my empty plate, a knot forming in my stomach. The meal was almost over. This unexpected reprieve, this brief moment of connection, was drawing to a close. I didn't want it to end. I wanted to stay in this warm, safe space under his quiet, steady gaze just a little longer. "Thank you, Dante," I said, looking up again, my voice barely a whisper. "For everything." He reached across the table, his hand briefly touching mine, a light, almost accidental brush. The contact sent a jolt through me, a spark that ignited something deep inside. His touch was fleeting, gone almost as soon as it began, but the sensation lingered, a warm echo on my skin. His eyes, those intense dark eyes, held mine. And in that moment, I knew with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified me that this was not just about a ride or a mechanic or a bowl of pasta. This was about something else entirely. Something new, something dangerous, and something utterly, irrevocably beautiful. The world outside with its broken trucks and endless struggles faded away, leaving only the quiet hum of the room, the lingering scent of his family's cooking, and the electric memory of his touch.